You name me one sports club, football team, baseball team that doesn't spend time in practice. And I'll name you 1,000 businesses that never practice anything. And then they wonder why they don't win the championship.
Today, I'm joined by my friend, mentor, and business partner, Russell Kern, who has nearly 50 years of marketing experience. The guy has seen it all and has all the stories from the trenches, working with some of the world's largest brands. And Russell drops a ton of knowledge bombs on how to get the best performance out of your agency. So if you're a brand that's working with an agency or looking to kick off a new partnership with an agency, we go rapid fire with what are the biggest mistakes that brands make while working with an agency, and how can you motivate your agency to do the best work for you for a long, long time. So stick around to the end. I think that's when our conversation really heats up and the knowledge starts flying. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast, my friend. It's been a long time. I feel like the podcast interview is long overdue, actually.
It is long overdue. And because we're so brilliant, I can't wait to be sharing all of our stuff.
Before we get into it, I have so many questions, and you have a crazy career. I'd like to hear your background from you, how you got here, who you are, all the stuff.
I don't think we have enough time in the day, but we'll try.
Well, I think too, and even just for you, context, the whole mission and the whole question behind this podcast, why I'm starting it, is to answer the question, how do brands go from a few $1 million a year to $100 million a year and then beyond that? But, I'm not talking about startups, and we're not talking about brands that are at scale, massive scale. It's kind of that gap. So, anything that you want to talk about or anything about your experience that's relevant to that'd be great. But let's just start at how, your background, where did you come from? How are you a marketer? All those.
I came from a medical family who didn't want to spend any time back in the hospitals when I was a young kid, to falling out of college, meaning when I graduated going, oh my God, I need a job, and got an interview at an advertising agency. And I liked it. It just seemed to fit. I like to do sales. I used to sell jelly beans on a push cart, and lo and behold, 2 years later, I started my own agency. It was 2 guys in a shed, one of those classic startups. And we got to ride the software boom. So we're talking many, many decades ago. But over that time, the business went from nothing to $1 million to 2 to 5. We plateaued at around 10 million. There were some big mistakes in that journey. And then the big breakthroughs were with my mentor, who really taught me about scaling and efficiency and repetitiveness. And then, of course, as our dear friend says, if you work hard enough, you get lucky enough. So after 20 plus years, preparation meets opportunity. And we got very lucky, big, huge client breaks, which transformed the business to $100 million. So been on the journey for a long time, almost coming on 5 decades, which is frightening.
Well, I think, I want a big thank you too, because for anybody listening, you've been a mentor to me for many, many years. I owe my career, my journey, all the stuff to you for taking me under your wing. So a big thank you.
It's a great ride. It's been a great ride. The truth is, we are great and we collaborate together, which is why we've had great successes in collaboration. I'm all about that.
So when you think back to it, you must have, you've worked with dozens and dozens of brands and companies, and you think back to maybe we can just even go in the mistakes of they come to the agency. Let's do a hypothetical. They come to your agency that you ran for, in whatever shape and form for 30 years, something like that.
40.
Yeah. Who's counting? 40 years. They come to the agency. I know, the agency was all about growth, acquisition for most of its, trajectory. What's the most common reason they're coming to the agency, and what are the most common mistakes that you would see when onboarding a new client?
Yeah. So in the space we were in, which was the direct response space, they would always, almost 90% of the time come because of program performance. The program wasn't delivering, it wasn't hitting their number, it wasn't meeting their cost of acquisition, it wasn't meeting their customer lifetime value, they weren't getting response. Any one of those metrics would say, my program is broken, it's not working. So that also, to help scale the business, that understanding of why they were coming, that we weren't Bentley manufacturers, we were doctors, and we were there to solve a pretty big pain. And that pain was, if I can't get this program going, I could lose my job. So to grow the agency, part of it was knowing who we were and who we weren't. And that took a while. So yeah, that's why they come. Now, when they would onboard, I think the hardest part of onboarding was trying to set reasonable expectation of how you get from poor performance to great performance, and how you can use small multivariate testing that might not be each cell might not be statistically significant, but you get a wide variety of tests to create trend, and then you can build upon it. So part of it was patience. Oh, I want an immediate result right away. That's okay. We'll get as best result as we can. The second is just comprehension of the startup. Here's our brand. Here's our assets. Here's what we stand for. These are our legal requirements. These are, I think in a startup of relationship, you go through this whole cycle of knowing the client, and it's not knowing their business, but knowing all the things that make the outputs require time, rounds and rounds of time. Now, we've had we worked for some of the biggest clients, and I can't say some were great, some weren't. Small clients are a little more difficult, but a little more agile. Um, and
Wh-
the
And
most successful, go ahead. I'm there.
so like, yeah, that's where I was going to go. You've worked with, and we've worked together. So we've worked with some of the largest brands in the entire world. From your perspective, these are not, amateurs, and they're coming to an agency because their program is broken. It's not working, but it's likely that they weren't working with a bad agency before, or, they're working with smart people. So what do you think it is? Like, what's the
Well,
problem? Why can't they get out of their own way? Or
well,
what are
there's two things that happen. One is the service delivery of the agency declines. There's turnover in the account service, turnover in the creative service, turnover in the responsiveness. Something happens where the client has a service dissatisfaction. That's one. That's just the agency just shooting itself. The other thing is, why can't they get out of their own way? Because from a neuroscience perspective, we have our own biases and we get locked into habit. And I think also agencies get locked into trying to maximize profit, which means trying to keep close to where they are versus reinvent the wheel. New agencies always have a chance to beat an incumbent because they bring fresh thinking. It's very hard for an old agency, depending on a relationship, to be able to bring fresh perspective, fresh thinking. How many ways can you sell satellite television? How many ways can you sell internet access? And lo and behold, there are plenty of new ways, but we have our own internal biases and exhaustions that happen within the creative department and even in the strategy department, even in the media department, that keep the client from accelerating. And also, there's a limit of knowledge within the body of people you have. So
oh,
that's where, if an agency that is able to collaborate outside and not be so paranoid, they have to be the only one with the only answer, is able to bring the biggest level of ideation to a client.
so I hear you on, like, from the agency perspective. You're trying to build this repeatable machine so that you can scale and it's highly profitable, and which might work for the beginning of a relationship with a client, maybe a couple years, right? It's like, all right, this is what we do, this is what we deliver, it gets you results, and then over time it's like, okay, well, what have you done for me lately? How from the what advice would you have for like a client who's working with an agency for a long period of time to combat that fatigue
Oh,
or that
yeah,
complacency
no,
from setting in?
no problem. So I think the single most important thing a client can do to get great work from an agency is be appreciative. So, so that would be the first thing, which is if you're a great strategic partner and you, the client, give love to your agency will die for you because they're just humans wanting to get appreciation for their creative work and result. The second thing is be diligent in your either biannual or annual, but I recommend at the speed where biannual strategic review, unpacking, re-review, fresh analysis, fresh look without blame, without fear. Hey, let's take a fresh look at the business. What have we gained? What else is happening in the marketplace? What can we take from outside our own market that people are doing that we want to use? So having a great strategic ideation, and now you have this incredible tool that you should bring to the party and start to have it be part of the collaboration process. That's the best way to get out of it. And I think the third way is invite others into the party. Don't, in those strategic ideation, bring in other experts to bring fresh perspectives without, unfortunately, I think agencies get paranoid. They're going to get fired and not loved. So if there's a psychological safety between client and agency, just like there is you want within your team, the agency can then use its imagination. I know we brought in a UCLA doctor of psychology to talk about purchase behavior for direct TV. So you don't have to have all the knowledge. You just have to help the client access it. And now you got this new tool that we haven't had.
And is there anything that, so let's say a client is working with an agency, they're starting to detect kind of a lack of innovation or, hey, it's the same old, same old. They can do those things. Is there anything else they can do to maybe push an agency outside of its comfort zone to do things that it hasn't done before?
I,
Or is it
I think it would be so we used to make every quarter as part of the quarter is what innovations have we brought to the client so that the client could make that as part of it. Every quarter, I want to see innovation. I want to see, quote, innovation, or I want to just see creative exploratory. Once a quarter, I want to see 10 creative exploratory. So that'd be 40 a year. That can either be a strategic exploratory, a concept exploratory, an offer exploratory, a media exploratory. But if that's kind of the arrangement, then that by nature gives everybody a deadline and incentive to be pushing because you're trying to keep the energy in the relationship for a result.
yeah. What else is getting in the way of growth from a client's perspective or from what you've seen at brands? Like you just want to just shake them and just be like, "Oh, you guys only did this. We could get to the next level."
So I've seen it. So one perspective is the wrong investment spend to drive growth. That, hey, we're going to make this huge investment in awareness and that will magically drive growth. I think the second thing with growth is have you built the systems to scale? When you're growing, you've got, and depending upon the type of client, you've got manufacturing, distribution, sales enablement, marketing, finance. There's so many factors to grow. I think the thing that gets in the way of growth is understanding what are the levers and what are the smallest actions that will get you the biggest result. So part of it is just stepping back and really having the strategic growth initiative. So, and one of my favorite books is from Vern Harnish, I think it's called Scaling Up. And he's got a whole set of templates and methodologies and all the rest of it, because the hard part is to just remember it all. We as business people, maybe not everyone listening, but we as business people rely on our memory way too much. Pilots never rely on their memory. They have a whole set of checklists every time they use. And I think that the psychological behavior of just thinking they remember, or I'm going to come up with the ideas versus the diligence of a checklist for scale. And there's lots of them out there. Have I thought through what am I doing? I think that's one of the things that gets in the way.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I always like to say with the clients that we're working with, the first time that you do a campaign, like let's say they have an in-house marketing team, in-house creative team. The first time you do a campaign, it's fun. And the first set of Facebook ads or meta ads you do, they're fun. Maybe the second one is fun. The third one, the fourth one, the 100th one becomes a chore. The different versioning that you have to do to make the tonnage of ads that are required today is a chore. And that's the checklist. That's the flight check, what at least in our world of what's required to be successful. You just need to do all these little things that are a bore or a chore in the versioning that just work, but they're not sexy. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's in the very tactical world. And I'm not
Yeah.
even talking in the strategic world of like
Yeah. And
strategic.
that's
Who's your audience? What's your offer? Where's your targeting?
and that's a very interesting thing, which is if you know that it takes 1,000 points of light to create a galaxy of success, then ensuring you have the infrastructure to do it, because creative people like to create, and you need this infrastructure of production. I mean, I know one of our key growths is that we had a massive production engine on behalf of our clients that could scale. And those were different people and different folks than the ideation people. And so whether you're in-house or using an agency, I think that's a key thing, because sometimes you need a bunch of work that isn't the sexiest, but if you don't have that bunch of work, as you say, formats, templates, etc., you miss what you need.
Yeah, well, AI is going to solve that all for us, so don't worry about it.
Well, on its journey, it won't be perfect, but right now, as you and I have talked about, we're at the fax machine level. It will change. I was talking to my wife today. I said we're at an incredible time of both worry and greatness, because before we know it, quantum computing and AI will be at levels that will change the game we as humans don't know. And what the work we do and what you do will change, but it's also full of uncertainty. So I think it's a great time, but in the short term, you got to just do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Wing the axe, pick it up, make your versions, find the right partner, test the heck out of it. Also, the other thing is, I think is that what gets in their way is valuing creativity. So I remember one of my kind of things, and I think the numbers now, you're exposed to something like, I don't know, 3,000 messages a day, or 3,000. Now it's 3,000 messages a second, some huge number of exposures to our little eyeballs that are designed to see planes. And so we are masters of paying no attention. But what gets people's attention is understanding how creativity works to pay attention, whether it's audio, video, print, in any channel. Humans are humans. And if you don't know how to decode that through creativity, message, there goes $1 out the door. I don't care how great you buy it. If the message doesn't land, it doesn't matter whether it costs you a penny. It won't work.
It's funny that is exactly what we're seeing in that gap that I'm talking about, that 3 million to 100 million. You can hack your way through good media buying and A/B tests and hardcore direct response tactics. You can hack your way close to 100 million. But to get well beyond, and you can go beyond that too, sure. Direct response works. But what we're seeing in the media buying today is that starts to plateau, and your contribution margin on your incrementality, those start to go down if you don't have brand building, if you don't have creativity. The people that would have come to buy from you without seeing that, if you turned all advertising off, how many people keep coming to buy from you? That number doesn't grow if all you're doing is hardcore direct response offer strategies. That's what we're seeing. It doesn't grow at the same rate as if you were doing brand building, which
No, so
requires
this
creativity.
this so this is the discussion of generations, right? The brand versus demand balance, and what it is and where it sits. And of course, from a customer acquisition standpoint, you want your brand to be so attractive you don't need to be buying every customer through media, that the brand, that you have repeat purchase, you have word of mouth, you have loyalty, you have all, influence, and all that is driving revenue. But that really means understanding the long-term value of investing in brand and having faith that in time, if your brand lands and resonates as one with your customer base, it will gain its awareness and preference among buyers and their friends.
How do you think about this? Is something that is a tricky thing that we talk about all the time. So, like, if you think about, let's say, the phases of a business or the size of a business, and then the shift from, let's say there's two camps. Let's say there's brand and the brand marketing awareness, and let's say there's direct response, and you have these two different levers. I'm going to kind of ignore that you could do like a brand response merge technique. I think one of the things that's tricky for smaller brands, we're talking in the tens of millions, is to try to make that leap to investing in awareness or brand marketing, because it's almost like the return is slow. It's a slow game, a slow burn. And if you do it too early, you might, or at least the fear is there that you might run out of money before you actually see the return. What comes to mind of
It's,
like that
it's
spectrum?
interesting. Yeah, I think my experience in having built another business, not an agency business, but a retail business. Oh, I lived that. So the fear is real. You can push too hard on brand and not get enough in the door. I I think as you grow, if you're a startup and trying to get your sales going, you're using a lot of demand, and as you get to a certain size, because there's economy of scale in business. That's why they want to get there, to get these economies of scale. You want to make that shift. Now, we always believed in sort of a branded response. Every impression creates a branded impression. So if you do just hardcore call now, well, whatever we'll call it, well, that says one thing about your company. If you do something else that maybe not as hard on the head, but creates a positive smile and gets a call, then you've got a good sauce to grow on. It might not be the lowest cost of acquisition. I think that's another problem. Oh, I want the lowest cost of acquisition. Everything's run by the lowest. And it's like, wait a minute. Yeah, you could low it, but you could, what's the expression? You can't cut expense your way to success, to growth, right? There's this expression, like, I'm going to cut all my expenses and get the lowest, most efficient. But there is a limitation to it all.
I always like the quote Ryan Dice from Digital Marketer said it. It's the company, and maybe he's quoting somebody else, but the company that can spend the most to acquire a customer wins.
Yeah, but to acquire the most, that means the customer acquisition needs to be at break even or profitable.
No, exactly what I'm saying. That again, the company that can spend the most to acquire the highest cost per acquisition, and you're able to spend that much, that's the
Yeah.
company who wins. And meaning, like, other areas of the business are so efficient that, or your marketing is so efficient or whatever, that you can't. Maybe your marketing is efficient is the wrong one, but like you can spend the most to. If I can spend $40 to acquire a customer, my competitor can only spend 20 because my business is set up to do it, then I will dominate them. And
You will dominate them, and of course, that's what big brands do, right? It's big armies. When you've got $100 million ad budget, that's a lot of bullets you get to shoot versus if your ad budget is $5 million. And so that's what everyone's trying to play. But I think if you're the mid market size, that we're talking about mid market, 10 million to 100 million, and trying to get above, because mid market go up to $1 billion. Your mission as the CEO is to definitely not act like a big brand. Your mission is to win your bowling alleys. I'm a crossing the chasm guy. To win your bowling alleys and create up and dominate them, so you can gain the momentum within them, and build preference there, because you just don't have enough scale at mid market level. You want to own the riches are in the niches. You can't act like a big brand. And that's where I think a lot of people can make a mistake. I want to act like a big brand. I made that mistake.
How so?
Well, I started a retail business in the med spa area and was in Southern California and wanted to get to scale fast. So you open offices, you use a media channel of radio, radio, is covering the whole Southern California area, but your economics aren't working out right. And so that's acting like a brand instead of acting like and we had a really nice brand and we were getting people in the door, but the economics kept not working. So I don't know where I'm going to go with that, but that took a lot. That was a hubris moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the other hubris moment might be good for is just don't go into something you don't know. I mean, I don't care whether you got 50 million in fresh capital in the bank, try to leverage your knowledge. And, I went into an industry I knew nothing about, nothing, absolutely nothing. That was the stupidest decision I made.
Mhm.
So take your knowledge and leverage it. There's plenty of money to be made.
How about let's touch on team structure, or just
And
and this kind of the stuff that you're working on now. And again, I know you're working with super large companies now, but
surprisingly,
like,
they're at all sizes. I have a pipe distribution company. That's like
yeah.
the 911 when there's water breaks. And then I have huge. Tell me what the question is on
So
team
so
structure.
what's the difference? I guess what brands that are growing, again, from that 3 million to 100 million, like what can they expect and what will they need to deal with as far as like as their team evolves, perhaps maybe
No problem.
layers in the organization, all
No
that, and
problem.
and any advice there?
Yeah. So generally in that size, you're a founder led company. And what typically happens is the founder is not always self aware of how their actions, behaviors, and tones influence the team. But the teams and how they operate are mirrors of the founder. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is not understanding the human dynamics and psychology, what makes a great team, and using old command and control methods, or not creating what we would call a culture or a platform that allows for the team to be effective. And then within any organization or team, I have agency over myself. What am I really trying to get out of this job, work, role, position? What is the company trying to get out of, and are they aligned? So that's a big issue, which keeps coming back to the leader being aware of what's happening and creating a work environment that is inspiring, and that everybody gets rewarded for this success, because people want to do their best at work. They really do. But has the leader accepted that? Is the leader's panic oozing all over the place? Is the business growth helping? There's all these things that influence really how the person shows up, how the team shows up.
Mhm.
And that starts with how the leader shows up. So I'm really, and I'm into the aspect of, you can know these factors, but to change your behavior requires really intentional thought, because we go to our habit. We go to what is our norm that we learned and nurtured and seen. And it takes real intentionality to change.
I think to build on that too, a leader or CEO recognizing where their weaknesses are, where they're not good at. Back to almost what you're saying with don't start a business that you know nothing about. Don't try to fill that role in the organization if you don't know anything about it. And find people
Yes.
that you can trust and let them do their
Yeah.
job.
Well, I look at it from the counter perspective. Know your strengths. So I'm a
Yeah.
really big fan of Clifton strengths. There's 34 and 5 themes. And I'm a big fan of Working Genius from the Table Group, which is the six natural geniuses of work over its 3 stages, because you want to go to your strength and therefore know your gap, know your weakness, and find a partner to fill the gap. Um, it's much easier to just gain the momentum on your strength and bring in someone who's a complement to you.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
can. So
Uh,
what do you think your
so
listeners, your audience, what question have we not discussed that they are just dying to have us bring an answer to or bring some perspective to?
I think it's, I honestly, I think a lot of brands that come to us kind of are looking for a silver bullet, um, oftentimes.
Okay.
And, I think that's a good idea. That you kind of mentioned it too, like just as part of the process. One thing I would say, there's not a silver bullet. It's gonna take anything takes a long time. Anything worth doing is you're gonna have to put work in it. But one of the things that we do, you and I worked on this recently, is okay. Let's plot out all the different things that we can do and get those listed out, and then use a prioritization process. We call it ICE. And so I'm just sharing this for anybody listening because it's a good tip. But, impact, confidence, ease of execution, three different criteria. You can create a simple spreadsheet. And then you could go to all the different departments in the organization. But if it's just marketing, let's just say it's marketing and brainstorm all the different things that you can do, and then rank those things by impact, confidence, ease, scale 1 to 10, and then just do an average of them. And I think that that'll get there is no silver bullet, but that'll get you as close to it as possible, in the sense that if you have smart people contributing to that list, you'll have some gems on there that are actually very easy to execute with high impact. And so
Yes.
enough of those done in rapid succession can get you close to a silver bullet. So that's how
And
we approach it.
understand. And I was speaking to a chief marketing officer at a large insurance company, and we went through what are the questions that she asks of her team and how does she view the world. And what's very interesting, her view was this is about resource allocation. So I think, what is the smallest thing we could do to have the biggest impact, the ice. But she also said, how big is the opportunity? Let us not spend resource and time if the opportunity we're going to uncover is not going to be game changing. And so opportunity size is as important as tactical selection.
Yeah.
And
And let me
having,
be clear, I think that you nailed it. I think that's where, when we're doing that ranking exercise with ICE, impact, confidence, ease, that's the one that is often misinterpreted, because part of impact, the biggest part of impact, is what is the size of the opportunity? Are we going to, let's say we're making stuff in the creative department. Are we going to make this thing for 7 people who are going to see it? Or are we going to make this thing because 20 million people are going to see it? Is this a autoresponder email that a couple people who bought this specific product see, or is this a masthead takeover on youtube.com?
yeah.
And that will, influence where it goes. And that's, comes out in the ranking structure.
Well, that's a reach issue. What
Sure.
is my reach and its impact? And along with that is the assumption of the buying population, because most of your clients are e-commerce, they sell stuff. They got to sell it to marketplaces. Are there enough buyers? And where are they that they're going to get the revenues they need given the exposures you're going to generate? So it's this, we are all about resource allocation and rank ordering of that resource. It's very scarce. And in my 40 years, I've never seen a magic bullet, but I have seen things companies are doing that are just not effective. And if they would go to a different approach, style, format, delivery, headline, whatever, they get to capitalize on the fundamentals that work. There are things that work and things that don't. And if you miss the fundamentals for a wrong reason, I've seen that be costly.
Can you be more specific? Can you think of an
Well,
example of that?
in my time, we did a lot of direct mail. So, we would see people with postcards, or we would see people with multi fancy self mailers. But the bread and butter of the direct mail industry, which I think is still today, it's called the number 10, 11 by 17 split and nest blind OE. So if a client was going, oh, I mail these postcards out, it's not working. I mail these self mailers out. It's like, okay, try this format to this audience and use this offer structure, and boom, response would go up 2, 3, 4 times because there were lots of little psychological aspects that make that thing work. And that could be in the headline too, a wrong headline or a wrong offer structure or a wrong, it created more work or it was too creative and not clear. Those would
Yeah.
be all things that hurt performance, and trying to find the line between creativity and clarity, I think is the art for all growing brands.
I think it goes back to that checklist, that flight checklist. So if you're a brand, this is why working I'm biased. I run an agency. You
Oh,
used to run
oh,
an
you think?
agency. Yeah, yeah, can you guess I'm biased? But my advice genuinely would be for a brand to find a good agency partner because you're able to benefit from the window that they have into all these different businesses and all that experience. And so their flight checklist of to get them to the starting point for your campaign or your set of ads is gonna be phenomenal compared to you trying to, do your own research and get there from
Yeah.
scratch.
So
So
that's a really good point. If you're at the 5, 10 million and growing, and you're going, "God, but Mike, it's going to cost me more to hire an outside agency. I got a staff. I found this great designer and writer and videographer. I'm going to do it all in house, and we're going to edit ourselves." That's okay. The trouble is your knowledge source is limited by the experiences of those that you could afford to hire and the size of the team. It's not your fault. It just is what it is. And an agency that has scale and size has many more people, many more experiences, many more failures, many successes that they bring to the party. Now, where we would get to with clients is, what are the biggest things the agency can do that will drive the business? And what are the things we should be doing in house because it's just more efficient, economical? It never was 100%. It was always some mix of, okay, this stays in and this goes out. And
yeah.
so that's, I don't, there are some that it's 100%, but generally you need some things in house that need to get done and whatever. And then, of course, you want that diversity of thought that an agency brings, because that's their structure to do that. That's their partner.
So my
That's like,
my advice to build on that, my advice to a lot of brands that we work with, e-commerce brands who are scaling is to actually you have to have an in-house creative team. You cannot outsource all of your creative because you need those people to be super close to the brand and the products and living and breathing and loving what the brand does and the things that they sell. You have to be breathing that. And then the analogy I use is the agency becomes your, amplifier or your performance
yeah,
enhancing drug.
yeah,
And my agency, I always say, we're in the amplification business. And if y'all, the brand, aren't doing anything worth amplifying, it makes any agency's job very difficult.
yeah,
Um, and if you're trying to just completely outsource all of your ideas or, the unique selling proposition, all this, if you're trying to just push that outside, I just don't think that's a winning formula for the brands that we work with, or which are
no.
these
And, and,
mid-market.
and I also think, building on that, is the agency doesn't have the political internal pressures of the internal agency. So the internal agency gets caught up in their own stuff. Now it's all an urgent and important, and we got to get it done, and we need this little thing, we need this thing, we need a big thing, whatever. So they have their own stuff. The agency actually gets the chance to step away, think, and bring, and that's a very important diversity of types of team players. Just think of them as teams. I got a fast response team, and also the internal agency ideally keeps the brand that the agency is working with. Because generally, if you're asking an agency, unless you're a big brand, you're asking your agency to build your whole brand, that's not an inexpensive proposition. It takes a lot of time, energy, and effort, and generally a big check. So you
Yeah.
want to,
And if you don't have the team that's able to, do the whole thing, build the brand from scratch, which most companies don't have that team, or you don't want them because back to the other point, You want a team that's done it many times before for many different brands because they're just going to get to probably a better result. What my advice would be is focus on writing the best damn brief you possibly can to your agency. That's another area where I think
Well,
that clients are
yes.
don't know how to do because there's nobody there to there's no lesson or training program to teach you how to write a creative brief. That's an agency world thing, but it is the most valuable skill you possibly could have, in my opinion.
Yeah. So this is the most interesting piece that I would say. Where do clients get in their own way? The direction they give is not clear and thorough. They think if I just tell you the problem, that you then know that you, the agency, will magically figure it out. But that brief is the crucial piece that sets the guidelines, the insights. Now, if you don't know everything about the audience and you want the agency to find that but but the brief is everything because the brief is the blueprint, it's the architect, it's the voice, it's all those pieces. And you I think the thing I even learned from you, it's the single thing we would train on and the thing we would hammer on. And the other thing I've noticed is some often clients don't pay attention to the brief the agency sends back and then wonder why the work didn't match. Well, wait a minute. This was the brief. Did you read the brief? Oh yeah, see, I signed off on it. It's a serious document. A really now I've seen them in lots of different ways and lots of different tools and lots of different stuff, but and it's hard writing a strategic, creative brief that is thorough and well thought out because the word strategy by definition means what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, who you're going to be and who you're not going to be. And that takes guts to determine who are you for and who are you not for. And many times it's delegated to a junior person who they don't have the ability, the knowledge, the wisdom, the power to make such a critical decision that only the business owners can make.
Yeah.
It's everything.
I always tell the story, and I don't even remember if this is just agency folklore or this actually happened, but I tell the story like it's true that, when the stakes are high, I tell it like it actually happened. Stakes are really high, huge campaign that we're developing in the agency, huge media buy behind it, hundred thousands of, you know, hours dedicated to this thing. When it's that high, we would require the CMO or the CEO to physically sign the brief before we went and actually did that work. Again, I don't know if we actually did that or if it was folklore, but I tell it because that's how important it is.
Well,
Bef-
I know when we were on the working on brand programs, and we weren't always working on a brand program, is it was at the CMO level because it's everything. Now, when you're getting down to the program level or the channel level, well, that's supposed to be their job. They're supposed to know, but that brief is just as important. Hey, this is a Facebook channel program. Our objective is blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. Here's where we are. Whatever it is. I'm not a social media expert of it all, but that that's because that's where the rubber meets the road.
yeah,
And
there's
yeah, here's one other thing. I would say, because I just came back to a conference. It was just on a phone call. What are we talking about? I want these people to have all these skills of collaboration, but they're not doing it. And I said, have you invested in anything to teach them the skill? No, no, they're supposed to be brilliant. I said, no, ain't going to happen. So I think, especially as you're growing, there's so many things you're worried about. You forget, and maybe this is the line you and I both use is you don't realize the power of training and practice. You name me one sports club, football team, baseball team that doesn't spend time in practice. And I'll name you 1,000 businesses that never practice anything. And then they wonder why they don't win the championship.
what does practice look like in a business though?
It means focusing on skill, a whole range of skills. How do you write a creative brief? Okay, let's take this one, product A, and let's everyone write their first version of it. Okay, how did we do? Let's pass it around. Okay, well, how might we do? What do we miss? What do we include? That would be a practice. Now, it might require an hour out of productivity of doing, well, client work or getting done, but that 1 hour could save you hundreds and thousands of dollars. That's what an example of practice is. And then there's
Right.
practice of, hey, do I know how to communicate? Do I know my communication style? Do I know how to give feedback? I mean, there's a range of skills, of human dynamic skills and technical skills. But and of course, the smaller you are, the less you think you have time for it. But the more importantly, you need to have it. Didn't maybe you and I discuss the fact that I was with my mentor that the more you practice on your processes, the more efficient you are, the better you win. It's
Mhm.
absolutely the inverse. I don't have time. What do you mean? You don't have time to you always have time to do it over. You don't really have time to do it wrong, but you can if you don't practice.
We're coming up on the hour mark. Let's
That's
play a
it.
game. Let's end on this. Let's end on this. Let's just see if we can do rapid fire. Just the things you because we already talked about this. The things that brands or folks on the client side in our world can do to get the best results out of their agency. How do they be a great client? I can start because a client recently asked us this question. What are your best partners? What separates your best brand partners from your okay brand partners? And the first one I had is the best brands that we work with create lots of content made by people who are truly passionate about the products or the thing that they sell. So either those people are in front of the camera or behind the camera, but they have a small to a pretty large team that just cranks out content. And I'm not talking making the ads, I'm talking about they just have a huge library of footage and photos and just raw ingredients, I like to call them, that can be turned into your marketing or your brand assets or anything like that. But in our world, if you have a shortage of creative assets to work with that aren't surface level trivial garbage, really things that from people who are truly passionate about your products, then you can tap in an agency partner or grow your own creative team to use those raw ingredients to start building up the brand and the ad. So,
So I'll
what
support that, which is the IDEO method of creativity. And IDEO is a very famous product packaging designer. They're about quantity over quality. Because if you have quantity, you can get to quality. And so more is a great partner, exactly what you say, because out of the more, you have different permutations and combinations, but without a lot of more. So that would be one. I think this piece I mentioned, what makes a great client is appreciation. Knowing the people you're working with just want love and heart. And if you give them love and heart, they give you back love and heart 2 times over.
I'll go another one, rapid fire. Uh, Being an engaged client and being accountable for your own business. It sounds crazy, but when a client is, contributing to the brief, contributing ideas, knows their numbers, is brainstorming with us, is strategizing with us instead of just trying to hand off their obligations and their accountability to the agency, that's a recipe for disaster and a recipe for resentment and tension and creates an us versus them culture between your agency, which will just never nobody back to appreciation. You don't feel appreciated. You feel that you're always at odds with your agency or vice versa. So just making your agency partner be part of your own team and actually bringing your own energy and enthusiasm and ideas to the table.
I had someone tell me is don't be a tourist, right? If you're in marketing, you can't be a tourist. You can't just watch the world go by. You got to get on the ground and go see the sights and you got to get there and live it on the ground. So that would be one. I was wanted to add one more where you're going to, but I'll just say don't be a tourist. Get it. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Know your audiences. And I don't mean demographically, I mean deep psychologically. What is their, because we are all humans driven by survival, pain, and pleasure. And if you can't understand and articulate those points, then how can you guide your creative department? So you got to really know your customer.
Yeah, one thing that is just boggles my mind that almost no brands do. Call your customers, call them, or bribe them with an Amazon gift card to get on a call with you and just talk to
Well,
them.
so this is I'll tell you where this goes. I know you're trying to get rapid fire is it's hard for the marketer to be the salesperson.
Yeah.
So marketers by their nature I mean, they do sell, they're selling stuff, but there's a big difference between a salesperson who's face to face with client after client after client all day long and talking versus a marketer. And it's also very different than if a marketer sat in a group or a focus group or whatever. And so they have to overcome this reluctance or be able to have something that enables the client conversation that also isn't ingratiating like at a trade show. Because the trouble is, if you're at a booth at a trade, oh, here's my customers. Human nature is they're going to tell you all the nice things. You want to hear the real, authentic conversation. And that's a different setting and a different environment. So context matters.
Yep. Yeah. It's just, we could go all day. I'll add one on that because it's just a small little tactical thing that brands can do to help understand. Because it reminds me of, if you're interviewing prospects, not customers, they're not bad people, but they lie. They inadvertently, they don't mean to, but they just tell you things that kind of make them seem smart or whatever.
Mm.
They don't tell you the truth because they don't even know the truth. But
Yeah.
there's a
Don't
moment in e-com, direct to consumer, right after purchase, you can ask them a question, and the phrasing is really particular. What's the number one reason you purchased this product today? And so we'll put in a little post-purchase survey right on the confirmation page and ask that question. And it's just an open-ended question. We kind of make it look like it's not required, but maybe we put it in red or put a box there so it's very prominent. And the answers you get at the moment after they've hit submit on their credit card information are just so insightful. And it's often stuff that you never would have thought of. Or what you'll see is you'll see your marketing actually working because they will echo back the messages that you had in market. So like, oh, that's the thing that's resonating. When we say that it's made with all natural ingredients, that's why they're buying. Let's double down on that message because it's working. Even though it's, directional and anecdotal, it's enough to make marketing decisions on.
No, it's that when human beings take a behavior and you're able to understand why they took the behavior, whether it's a hope or a dream, I hope this product will do this. I really like this about that product. That's money. That's gold. That's marketing gold. That's true, authentic feedback that you can't get through many other research methodologies.
Is there anything that you'd want to share that you don't think we've covered here? Any advice?
I want to just double down on get involved. Don't be a tourist. Great marketers are deeply involved with their partners, with their passion, side by side. And while they're busy and overwhelmed, they know that if they're not a good leader, right? Because the marketer in the agency, that person who's engaged, they're the leader. The agency has its own, they're the leader. So if they're not setting an example of leadership, of engagement, of tone, of method, then you only get what you send. So I would say if you are not happy with who you have, first you got to look at, well, maybe it's my responsibility, right? The first thing is take self-accountability. What am I doing that's keeping this from getting to where it needs to be? Can the relationship really be better or the work better? And what am I doing to keep it from that? And then, hey, I have a relationship and it's my job to invest in it as you do in a marriage or a friendship or whatever. If I'm not investing with the right perspective, how can I expect it to flourish? Who wins in that? That's my breath.
Love it. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the chat.
My joy. My joy.
All right.
Okay.
We'll catch you around.